The opinions expressed on the radio program by the hosts, co hosts, guests, and call in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
It's another Thoughtful Thursday, and you're on the air with Reason for Reason, and I'm your host, Ron Yates. So let me give you a little background on today's segment. So yesterday I was talking with a very good friend of mine who's going to be my guest today, who's actually on already. And we were kind of talking about this whole thing with this anti-DEI movement and the loss of affirmative action. And, we started kicking it and we went back to basically the origin. And when you know the origin, you can kind of see the progress of how we got to where we are today. So on air with me today is a very good friend, someone I've known, oh my God, 30 plus years, who's out now in the desert Southwest, out in Arizona. So folks, give it up for a good friend of mine, Ariel Haynes. You there, Ariel? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's good, bro. So, we were talking about this yesterday, right? And I know we were talking about the whole, this anti-DEI and the end of affirmative action, right? So, we were talking about it yesterday, and I just want to go back to the origin, because you know what? If you're going to treat a disease, sometimes you need to know the origin of that disease, right? How it spreads, how fast it spreads, right? So going back in time, in this country, the United States, or what would become the United States of America, prior to, I guess, the 17th century, there were no talk of white people in this country. In fact, there were no white people in this country. A lot of people are going to be confused, like, well, wait a minute. Columbus came here in 1492, or he left in 1492. When he arrived on these shores, some months later, Columbus did not consider himself a white man. None of the explorers who came over with Columbus, or even in subsequent voyages, considered themselves white. Whiteness did not exist until about 1681 in this country. When the English, who were looking to put down a rebellion, actually it was Bacon's rebellion down in, Virginia, Maryland area, they came up with the idea of whiteness. And they said, listen, what we're going to do, we're going to give certain incentives for you to say you're white. Because during that time, prior to this whole race debacle, right? Which in race is just it's a construct that doesn't exist, right? But prior to this whole race debacle, people of different skin color and ethnicities have been intermarrying for years, right? It's like there's all this nonsense about Meghan, right? Who married Prince, which one is it? William? Harry, right? Okay. Well, if they go back and they do a little research, they find out that their great-great-great-great-grandmother, Queen Charlotte, had African ancestry. So for these folks that consider themselves the royals of the UK, they got black blood running through their veins, right? So Meghan Markle should be of no surprise. But, this whole thing was started by the English in order to divide people. And it worked very, very well. And what they did was they told, say, a white woman who was married to a black man, they said, listen, if you will adopt whiteness, we will free you. will give you some other incentives like the opportunity to own land, right? But if you decide not to become white, then you revert back to your prior condition. That means you're back in the slave quarters with him, getting your back beat. So it didn't take a rocket scientist to say, you know what? I think I'm going to call myself white. I'm tired of getting my back beat. And in this country, we've always had, I shouldn't say always, but since that time, from the 17th century forward, we've had these divisions because the same pseudoscientists that came up with this nonsense of separate races of man, well, then they came up with a particular form of superiority for one particular race. It's crazy because when you and I were learning about medicine with EMS, we learned that the outer layer of the skin is the epidermis. Is that right? You remember that?
100% epidermis.
Right. So if your pigment is determined by the outer layer of your skin and simply the outer layer, what makes you superior just because your outer layer is lighter? Makes no sense. And now I mentioned that you're out in Arizona, right?
That's right.
Now, Arizona has been a swing state. I mean, it's been interesting because Arizona, it really is a swing state because it kind of swings back and forth, right? I think that Obama won Arizona in both his elections, and Biden won. But then the pendulum kind of shifted and Trump won. So Arizona is kind of an interesting state in the fact that it swings so much, but also in the fact that it is one of the Mexican territories that were taken from Mexico in the war against Mexico and seized by this country. And it became one of the 6 southwestern states that became part of this country.
I think a lot of the reason why Arizona changed a lot, it was because we get a large influx of people from California,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a mass exodus of people from California coming to Arizona because you got a house for $800,000 or $1 million. They could sell the house, build the house from scratch, and don't have to pay a mortgage. So we got a lot of people from California coming to Arizona.
Now, it's interesting you said that because keep it in line with what we were saying about this whole ending of affirmative action and this anti-DEI movement. In the documentary I was watching yesterday called Eyes on the Prize, and folks who may be listening may be familiar with the original Eyes on the Prize series, which tracked the civil rights movement from the 1950s. Well, now there is Eyes on the Prize 3, and that picks up in the 1970s, and it moves forward, tracking the progress up to present time. And one of the things that was mentioned in the final segment of Eyes on the Prize 3 was that California, the state of California, white people or Caucasians were a minority out there. There was a mass exodus from California. And as you said, a lot of them came to Arizona. But when the politicians and others, and when I say others, I'm talking about the folks who I guess are the descendants of those who enslaved our people, when they came to the realization that they were having a mass exodus of Caucasians and that California was going to be, Caucasians were going to be a minority in California, they started to make some changes first in California's university system. They went and found a black man, and I need to do some research on this guy, but his name is Ward Connolly. And he decided that he was going to be the front man for ending affirmative action as it relates to higher education in this country. Now, we've had those throughout history. You know what I mean?
Right.
We have them now. We have Uncle Thomas, Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
We have Tim Scott. We have Byron Donalds, who calls Trump daddy.
Mhm.
Um,
And funny, none of them got a position in the cabinet. None of them.
and they were trying. In fact, Tim Scott thought he was on the short list for vice president.
Yeah, right.
But that's what he thought, right? He thought that if I can buck dance fast enough and scratch when I don't itch, then maybe he'll consider me and put me on the ticket. It was never going to be a consideration.
Mhm.
And for somebody like, Byron Donalds, for somebody like Tim Scott, when you have a president that now is saying he wants to cut off funding for things like the African American Museum, what sort of message is he sending? And do you think they're receiving this message?
On top of that, I heard that he wants to cut off the HBCUs now. He want to cut the funding now.
Well, that was coming around. I mean, he's cut off funding to prestigious universities like Harvard, Yale, and Columbia took the biggest hit, $400 million. And he cut them off because they had a Middle Eastern Studies program. And one of their students led a protest against Israel's occupation of Gaza. So that student, I know his first name is Mahmoud. I can't remember his last name.
Mm-hmm.
This dude was snatched up and is still
Right.
in ICE custody. And he's allowed to be in this country.
Mm-hmm.
He has a student visa. And today, yesterday was a hearing for the woman who was snatched up out of Tufts University, the doctoral student who was just walking. And these mass ICE agents approached her. And before she could answer a question, she was in handcuffs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would imagine you might be seeing a lot of that because, you're a border state.
Mm-hmm.
So you might be seeing a lot of that. What's going on in Arizona?
Well, okay, like I live in the Tucson area, in Phoenix is like the 5th largest city in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very large city. There's a location in the Phoenix, we call it Phoenix downtown, where you think is like Manhattan. It's like a lot of buildings and stuff like that. In that area, you could see like the change, like and the people like trying to unite with each other, especially the Mexican people,
Mm-hmm.
that they have zero toleration for immigration. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of segments on YouTube where Phoenix, Arizona, they actually closed down the bridges and they hide the roads. They just stopped the traffic, and they were saying no to immigration. And I think the ACLU has a location in Phoenix also. And I do believe I was educating the people in Phoenix and the Tucson area, the do's and the don'ts when encountered by immigration agent. As you mentioned before, anybody have the right to ask you anything,
Mm-hmm.
but it don't mean you have to comply. You have the right to say no. So something I try to convey to my children all the time is, we could fight the battle later, but take it in stages, right? So if somebody just stops you, start asking you a question, do you have reasonable articulable suspicion to believe that I've committed a crime? I'm committing a crime. I'm about to commit a crime. And if they demand ID, even though Arizona is not a ID state, if I refuse to provide you my ID, are you going to arrest me? And if the answer is yes, provide the ID. Because at the end of the day, as you know, is when a police officer or a person with authority comes to you in a certain way, they cannot own that battle right there. You got to be careful because, like we spoke the other day, some of these people out here that they're afraid of us. I don't know why. They will take no chances in shooting us
Mm-hmm.
without hesitation. While another person, Caucasian, they call the SWAT team, they talk to them, it takes 4 hours, they call everybody and stuff like that. But when it comes to our children, our women, and a man, they won't hesitate they even shoot us right through the door.
Oh, absolutely. That's happened multiple times.
Now in Phoenix, I see those people are standing for their rights. I know in Tucson they have I've seen a couple of like not-for-profit organizations where they go in the churches and they kind of educate uneducated aliens, or whatever terminology we want to use, and the do's and the don't if somebody was to question you. And one thing they drive down is a police officer doesn't have an immigration authority.
Right.
A federal agent does, but a federal agent that works for immigration have authority. So if a person said the DEA, they don't have immigration authority. If a person said FBI, they don't have immigration authority. If a person is a U.S. Marshal, they don't have immigration authority. A person is ATF or Secret Service, they don't have immigration authority. The only two law enforcement agencies in the United States of America that have immigration authority is Homeland Security Investigation Division and the United States Border Patrol and CBP. Those are the only three agencies that I'm aware of that have immigration authority.
Well, I know right now the Trump administration has been basically trying to deputize local police officers to have them go out and detain and arrest immigrants, so-called illegal immigrants, which of course violates police protocol because we are knowingly violating people's Fourth and sometimes Fifth Amendment rights.
Correct.
And we can go down the line. We can go down to their Sixth Amendment right? And then we can jump the line and go down to the Eighth Amendment right, which guarantees them a speedy trial. But how do you get a speedy trial if you are hustled out of the country and sent someplace like El Salvador? And then the government realizes, oops, we made a mistake. We're sending people out of the country who have legal residence in this country, who had a right to a hearing. Here's an interesting story. In New York City, a man who's been in this country, 50 years or more, he is a community organizer in the Harlem area. His son is a New York City police officer. Well, ICE picked him up and they placed him in custody. And fortunately for him, the judge says, oh no, you're not going to deport him before there's a hearing. So he at least is going to have his day in court. And if he's been in this country that long and his son is a police officer, I would imagine that this man is documented, right? He may not be a citizen, but he's probably a resident alien, right? And allowed to remain in this country. But, you mentioned fear. And fear is a great motivator. And that is one of the things that motivates what's happening in this country as it relates to DEI and affirmative action. Not only are you Caucasians a minority in California, that is happening all over the world. If you think about it, India had an exploding birth rate for years, over 1 billion people in India. China, over 1 billion people in China. Africa, some of the largest countries in Africa, if the projections are right, within the next 15 to 20 years, Africa will exceed India and China in terms of birth rate. In this country, the United States, birth rates are falling. Women, particularly Caucasian women, are having trouble conceiving, right? That is why so many women have turned to IVF, which the illustrious president had no idea what it was. He had somebody explain to me very, very briefly what IVF is, right? He was basically against it, but didn't know what it was.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
but all across the world, all across the globe, Caucasians are rapidly becoming a minority. And that is the fear in this country. And that is the reason to keep people divided, keep the infighting, right? Keep
Mhm.
black against brown and white against everybody, right?
Mhm.
And we have been fighting this battle now, black and brown, for 400 years. For Caucasians in this country, I guess the issue with them is lack of proper education. They've never been taught the truth, right? You know, for them, a lot of them are under the misconception that African history began when we
Slaves.
arrived on these shores.
Correct.
No, African history goes back thousands of years. Our arrival into the United States, or what will become the United States, ended thousands of years of a glorious history that they do not know about. So they are under the impression, right, that this epidermis, this outer layer of their skin, and that alone makes them superior. And they'll, of course, tell you about the explorers like Columbus and all of the inventions that Europeans allegedly made until the truth comes out. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, Columbus wasn't too bright.
Colonizer.
Right. But I mean, here's a man that is supposed
And
to
he's
be an explorer who thought he was going west. But common sense tells you if the sun is rising and you're heading toward the rising sun, that means you're traveling east, right?
That's
So
correct.
he did not know where he was going. He was not a very skilled navigator or captain. He ended up in this country or in the Caribbean and called the people the Indians. Did not realize he wasn't in India.
Hmm.
Not
Correct.
the smartest dude, right?
Correct. And how
But
can you discover something that's people already there? You're not. It's
absolutely.
not like you went to Mars or the moon.
Exactly, right? Yeah, some place where people have not already been, right?
Hmm.
But when we're taught that in school, we gloss over the fact that there were people here. We focus
Correct.
on Columbus,
Correct.
what is called his discovery, right? That is what we focus on. And
Hmm.
because of that, most of us in this country are not well educated in the history, even the history of this country. You know what I mean?
Correct.
You know,
And sometimes we don't seek that information. We don't seek it. Like I was lucky. Like I was taking some notes in some of the stuff you mentioned, especially about the white women not having a lot of children. It's crazy, but when I went to Germany in the 1980s, right?
mhm,
Early 1990s, late 1980s,
mhm.
European women are crazy for black men.
Oh, absolutely.
So they're crazy. We call them war babies, right? Now
Mhm,
the parents might not, the male might not be crazy for the man for the black, but the women are crazy for black males, right?
mhm,
The same thing applies now. So it's like the one drop rule. Like these young ladies, even the ladies from the past, even during slavery, they will have a buck, and the women, on the DL, they will have sex with the bucks,
mhm.
you know. So through all this history now, women liberation and all this stuff, and women could do a lot of. Women are out there now. Um, it realization is that a lot of women, especially white women, it's a 50-50 chance that she's not gonna marry or have kids by a white man.
Right,
And those statistic is killing them. Now it's worse now because not only the black man, now you talk about Hispanic man.
right.
So now you go from 50 to 50 to maybe 25%. That's why I believe the numbers are going down, and they didn't want this abortion thing because they just wanted to have kids, just to have kids.
Right.
right? And I was kind of fortunate back in Brooklyn because when I came to the United States in 1979, I didn't know anything about slavery, blacks. Because in the Spanish countries, we don't teach that. We don't talk about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was already in the sixth grade, so I have an idea, what was going on with the Spanish culture, right? As far as
Right.
Spanish history. During that time, I never saw no education or heard about black inventors or black educators or the Moors or anything whatsoever when it comes to Africans or Shaka Zulu or Marcus Garvey or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I came here and I saw, I was going to school and I saw Muslim brothers talking the podium and breaking stuff down, I kind of stopped and listened to some of the things they said. And I also talked to the Rastafarians, right? I must
Right.
have been like maybe, I would say 13, 14 years old now. I'm in junior high school now. And they were telling me things that I know I was not getting in school. So I remember this Rastafarian guy, long dreadlocks. Some of these Rastafarian guys got hair all the way to the back and they got wrapped around and it just gets longer and longer. He told me a couple of names. He said, go to your teacher and ask about Marcus Garvey. Malcolm X, a lot. Just ask about Marcus Garvey. So I went to my social studies teacher and I asked him, when are we going to learn about Marcus Garvey? You know what he told me?
What?
He said, when you go to college, you could take African history as an elective. And then you could learn anything you want about Marcus Garvey. But the thing he didn't know was the Rastafarian guy taught me, hey, what did he tell you? He said, he said, you don't have to go to college. You got something called a library. Do your research.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my eyes opened up on the real history about blacks, slavery, Moors, where we came from.
I'll tell you something. When I was in college, and I went to college in Brooklyn, right downtown Brooklyn, UC Technical College, one of my professors for African history, he and I became very close friends. This man was born in Ghana, West Africa.
Ghana.
And he told me he did not know African history till he came to America.
Mm-hmm.
He lived on the continent, born there, raised there, but did not know African history. He had to come to this country in order to learn about his birthplace. And it was because in Africa, the colonization was such that they were learning about, the British were in control of Ghana.
That's right. European history.
Exactly. So they were learning about all the glorious, the European monarchs, particularly the English monarchs and their exploits, but nothing about the glory of Ghana. And the world's richest man, Mansa Musa.
Mansa Musa. They're going to make a movie about that.
Yep, came from Ghana, right?
Wow.
This man he traveled with so much gold that he upset the world's market, right? That's how much gold he had. For somebody like Elon Musk, or Elon Muskrat as they call him nowadays,
South Africa,
he's called the world's richest man. Well, he's got paper currency. This brother Mansa Musa had the gold. He had the real deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a time in this country where your dollar was backed by gold or silver. It ain't backed by nothing now.
That's
right?
correct.
So you could have tons of money like he has or he had before he started messing with Trumpenstein, right? Because now if you look at Tesla stock, in fact, from what I'm hearing, right, and what I'm reading, the investors want him to step down as chairman.
The board of directors want him to step down?
Oh, absolutely. Because listen, you're devoting so much time to going around with your chainsaw and destroying the lives of American workers that you're ignoring this company. And the stock is plummeting. And now we have people who are committing acts of, I'm not going to say terrorism, because you can't commit
Mhm.
terrorism against an inanimate object, but they're acting, doing acts of vandalism against Tesla cars and Tesla dealerships.
Mhm.
So that is only hurting not just here in this, the stock here in this country, but globally. People in other countries are also not buying Teslas. People are also vandalizing Tesla cars. People are selling their Teslas left and right, right? So the company is suffering. And for him to spend all his time in Washington going around talking about he's the leader of Doge, the investors are like, yo, man, listen, I don't know about Doge, but I know I invest a lot of money in this company.
Mhm.
And I'm not seeing any returns. I'm losing a lot of money. So if you're not able to manage this company and right the ship, you might as well step down and allow somebody else to take over. And in a publicly traded company, all they have to do is get the board of directors to vote him out. The other day, my wife told me he was being interviewed. He kind of broke down and cried when he talked about what's going on with him. Like somebody feels sorry for him.
No. I just, since you mentioned Tesla, I was just looking at their stock, and it says that in February or late January, the stock was about $500,
Uh-huh.
and as of today, it's only $267.28. That's
Exactly. So
madness.
they've lost about half of the value of the stock.
That
Right.
is madness.
Yeah. So these people, these investors are pissed off, right? Just imagine if your stock is trading at $500 just 4 months ago or 5 months ago, and now it's trading at half that, you've lost half of your investment, right? So I can understand these people being pissed, and that's why they want him out. And even Trump now, they were saying on the news today, Trump is saying, well, it looks like that he's going to be wrapping up his Doge responsibilities, and he'll be returning to run his various companies. Well, he'll be leaving, but he may not be going back to run his companies. They might be running him out of his companies. But I think that is what we've been discussing, this anti-DEI thing and affirmative action. It is all part and parcel of this notion of white supremacy, this notion that we are the only people that can be in charge, that should be in charge. God chose us to run things. Well, that mentality still exists. Clearly it does when you see a president who wants to defund a museum. What has the museum done to you? Has he ever been in the museum to see what's in there?
No.
He took over Lincoln.
Well, he don't even read. I mean, he don't even read.
And
He don't even read the Bible either. But he sworn. I mean, this guy. I could talk for days about this guy.
But you know what? Not only does he not read, he doesn't listen, right? Because there's got to be somebody who's reasonable enough to say, Mr. President, your tariffs are destructive. All your tariffs are doing, at least in the immediate, is going to raise prices on people who elected you to bring prices down. You're doing just the opposite. And in the long run, it's only going to get worse because it does not appear that these other countries are going to back down and reduce or eliminate their tariffs on American goods. So you have American farmers, right, who are hurting already. And it's only going to get worse. If you notice, just yesterday we had these tornadoes that came across the country, right, that swept across. The damage was in the Midwest. What's in the Midwest? That's America's heartland. That's the farm country. With all this wild weather, how do you plant? How do you grow crops? And on top of that, well, your labor force was just sent to El Salvador, to Venezuela. They're told to self-deport. So now you have farmers who voted for Trump on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram literally crying, like we've lost 70% of our workforce. What are we going to do now? And now, on top of that, the government is cutting funding for things like the USDA, for the Farm Bureau, right? So now these same people that supported Trump, that walk around with the MAGA hats, are now saying we're in trouble. And they never thought, as Caucasians, Republicans, as Caucasians and Republicans, right, in this country, they never thought any of Trump's policies would be detrimental to them. They thought it's going to be the brown people. It's going to be the black people. Those are the ones that Trump doesn't like. Those are the ones he's going to go after. Well, surprise, Doge did not discriminate. He, when you take a chainsaw to a tree, you don't discriminate on the tree. You're just cutting it down. And for Doge, he didn't discriminate. Elon Musk did not. He fired black, he fired brown, he fired white, he fired Asian. And a lot of these Caucasians voted for this. They said Trump is the man that's going to lead us back to greatness.
To greatness.
Right. And you know something? Here's the thing.
To greatness or to whiteness?
Well, here's the thing. In some people's mind, is there a difference?
Yeah, you got a point. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And, I'll tell you something, right? When we talk about making America great, that didn't come from Trump. That was Reagan. In 1980, when Reagan ran against Jimmy Carter, he coined the phrase, make America great again. That's where Trump got it from. But you know something? Reagan said, when he was running in 1980, are you any better off now than you were 4 years ago? So America was not great in 1980 or in the late 70s. And America's not great now. Even after Trump was in office for 4 years, America wasn't great then. Because if it was great, why would he need to run and say, I'm going to make America great again, if it was great? So when was America great? And is it possible for this country to be great? I don't see how, if you have a divided population, right? And I don't know about in Arizona, but I know here in Pennsylvania, if you go to someplace like Sam's Club and you want to buy gas, they don't accept U.S. currency. You have to pay with a debit card or a credit card. You cannot use cash. A lot of places do not want to accept your cash. How can a country be great if they won't even accept their own money? I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something. But if your own country won't accept your own currency, something is very wrong. And it's sad, right? Because we always have these conversations about race when race does not exist. It's a social construct, right? Physically, pretty much everybody's the same, right? If only we could teach that. And people want.
But the problem, Ron, is that I think for the most, I think people know that everybody's just human, right? But the status quo of the government, corporate, is divisive anywhere. Because when you apply for a job in any type of settings, whether it's government or corporation, they break it down by race.
They do.
So even if we educate people, it's not us that got to make the change. It's the government and the corporation got to make the changes on the application process, because they're the one that breaking us up.
But you know what? We are the government, right? And we are the ones who support these corporations. So we're talking yesterday, right? When we had the blackout day, people said, I'm not going out to shop. And people have been avoiding Target. Look at Target's earnings now as opposed to what it was 6 months ago, right? A lot of Target locations are probably going to have to close in the coming months because people are pissed off about this whole anti-DEI thing. It may work in Washington where you get to select who the members of your cabinet are, and all of them, with the exception of Marco Rubio, are white or Caucasian. That can work in Washington, but when you own a store like Target, a corporation like Target, well, there are other locations we can go to. You can't pick who comes through your doors. You have to hope that people from all communities will come in and do business with you, patronize your store. We don't have to, and we're not. And Target is suffering. So that's something that this country has always understood, and that is the bottom line. One of the reasons the Montgomery bus boycott worked so well, and something that I just learned very recently, there were other bus companies in Montgomery. They went out of business because they could not stand the loss of black ridership. Eventually, the bus company said, we got to take these white-only signs down. And let's be realistic. All that does is fuel people's belief that I'm superior because I can sit in the front of the bus. You paid the same fare. So whether you're sitting in the front of the bus or the back of the bus, I know psychologically it makes you feel superior because you get to sit up front, but you're still on the same bus. You're going in the same direction, traveling at the same speed. It's not like, you're getting picked up in a horse-drawn carriage with diamonds and rubies on the steps and a gold-plated carriage. No, you're riding the same bus, And if people understood we're all riding the same bus. And with Trump's economic policies, which Trump don't really have any policies, just whatever he wakes up with that morning and says, I didn't sleep so good last night, so I think I'm going to put 34% tariffs on China. Well, of course, China said some weeks back that they're prepared for any type of war, economic or otherwise. I think China is tired of America. I think China is tired of being told what to do with territory they consider theirs, like Taiwan. China has for years now been very, very active in expanding their power. China's all over the South China Sea, all over the Pacific. America thought, well, the whole world is ours. Well, China's saying, not so fast. China now controls 70% of the world's vital minerals supply. That's why we want to get Greenland, because Greenland has rivers of rare earth minerals, but you can't get to it because it's covered in ice, and other countries have tried. But Trump, who is the stable genius, who has a brain as large as a walnut, at least, says, well, I know how to get it out of the ice. Well, how, Mr. President?
The force.
Right. How? You couldn't figure out how to run Trump University, Trump Airlines, or Trump Taj Mahal, but now you can figure out how to extract rare earth minerals from layers of ice. How? And that's one of the things that people in this country do not ask of our political leadership. How? How do you propose to balance the budget? How do you propose to cut $880 billion out of the federal budget without touching Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security? How are you going to do that?
I think it can be done. In respect of China, I think China when we studied the problem that we have with our country is that we have very intelligent people in this country, right? We also got very dumb people in this country as well. But then we got dumb and rich.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, dumb rich by intelligent people to do what they want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we come a divided front. While these countries like China, Japan, I never seen, not like I seeked it. I never seen like the Chinese government fighting against each other, political parties. I never seen the Japanese government fighting against each other. They all united, right? And they have one mission. So, like our grandparents always told us, you get more bee with honey than you do with vinegar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So America, I won't say America, I would say the Trump administration has this air about themselves that we America, and whatever we say, you got to comply. Or we gonna invade you, or we gonna harm you, or we gonna punish you. It's everything has to do with some kind of violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
While China and Japan, they're more strategic. I think they have learned that you get more bees with honey because they don't come in a conquering mentality. They come, hey, you got these resources. We want to have a dialogue with you. We want to trade with you. What do you need? You say, well, we need this. Okay, no problem. Well, I could fund you the money for that. They don't talk about taking over your country. They don't talk about ownership of your country. They talk about funding your country for your projects. And that's how, when we talk about China, China already took over the whole world 20 years ago. It's now that the Trump administration and people are waking up, oh, everything is China. They already took over. They already took over the world. It's too late to try to fight that. But can we budget ourselves? Yes, we can. But we're not united. So when we got people like Taylor Green and Bobbitt and all this Republicans, bigots that come up there and just stop the show when we could be focusing, use all our intelligence with rash people that have got common sense to make the right decision based on the information that we gather. But I don't see that happening because all we've been doing for the last almost 20 years is fighting everything.
Well, you know something? Here's the problem, right? You made some valid points when you talk about people with common sense, right? Intelligent people. Those are not the people that get elected, right? You know, Trump was elected because there's a cult of personality, right? People that saw Trump on The Apprentice and believed what they saw on TV, right? You know, TV crafts a persona for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could make a dead man look alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they made Trump seem like the intelligent, smart, savvy businessman. And when people saw that and they saw him say, "You're fired," right? And they saw him sitting in the boardroom, they thought that's what this country needs. We need a businessman. We need somebody who knows how to balance budgets, who knows how to make projects and bring them to fruition on time, who knows banking and all this other stuff. Well, Trump doesn't know any of that stuff.
None of that stuff.
None of it. You know, if he knew banking, he wouldn't have filed bankruptcy 6 times.
Yep.
He destroyed his father's business. $400 million Trump got from his dad, and he went through that in no time.
And that's how he started with that money, and he messed that up.
Exactly. And then, there are a lot of banks in this country that will not lend Trump a dime. Trump had to go overseas to get European banks to lend him money because he was too much a credit risk in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But see, people didn't see that. They looked at The Apprentice and they fell in love with an image, right? And it became a cult of personality. So when he was running the first time, he said, look, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose a vote. He knew what he was talking about because Trump, he knows how to work the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
He may not know how to do anything as it relates to business, but he knows how to work the crowd. He knows what people want to hear, particularly the people that support him, right? So because of that, because of this lack of education, we in this country are electing some of the dumbest people that barely made it through Head Start, forget high school, right? Still can't figure out the colors in the crayon box, and now they're representing us.
He got a gag order on the school that he went to.
Yes, so they won't show his transcripts.
Yes, I was just looking up
Mm-hmm.
how many lawsuits Trump has right now. He has over 4,000 lawsuits against him right now.
Right.
4,000.
Right. And some of them, he's got lawsuits going back years, right? Because, I mean, see, Trump talks about how the justice system is rigged, right? Well, it wasn't rigged when he was using it, to knock people over the head with it. So people who didn't agree with him, people who were suing him, right, or threatened to sue him, he would slap a lawsuit on them. Anybody that was going to divulge information about Trump, he would slap a lawsuit on them, shut them up, right?
Right.
Central Park Jogger case. He takes out an ad in every new periodical talking about these boys are animals worthy of death. Well,
Central Park 5.
Exactly. If the system was rigged, why would you put people into a rigged system?
That's right.
It only became rigged when they went after him. And, what I find fascinating is that people in this country went down to Washington, sat there, listened to people like Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani, and then, last but not least, Donald Trump, getting them hyped up and angry all through the night, then said, we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Yeah.
Right? You pour gas on a fire all night long and don't expect there to be burning and flames. This is what they did. And then they walked down to the Capitol. And these people went into the Capitol, destroyed it, tried to get at the elected representatives.
Right.
I mean, look, I can understand anger, frustration at the government. What I can understand is you going down there to try to stop the steal.
Mm-hmm.
When the economy collapsed, when the market collapsed in 2008, and they were taking your homes, you didn't march then. You didn't storm the Capitol then.
Mm-hmm.
When they cut money from education, the future for your children, you didn't storm the Capitol then.
Mm-hmm.
When the government went after labor and started taking pensions, health care, you didn't storm the damn Capitol then. Those are things that affect you directly. You went down there to storm the Capitol because Donald Trump told you, we won the election. Didn't have no proof, just his word. We won the election. Years later, he admitted he lost. Maybe that's the reason why he decided to sign the papers and release all of those people that were arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess that's his admission. He's never going to say sorry, but I guess that's his admission of saying, you know what, I screwed you. But you know what, Brother Ariel, we're getting close to that time. We're going to have to wrap this up. I wish we had more time, but
I enjoy this. I got to do this more often with you.
Oh yeah, brother. We will have you on again. We have an hour, and there's so much to talk about.
Yes.
So many things happen in the world. So many things happen in this country. And every day, with Don Trumpione in the office, there is something new every day. Today it was the tariffs. Who knows what the hell it's going to be tomorrow?
That's the worst presentation ever I've seen.
Oh,
ever.
But you know what? It was good talking to you. We're definitely going to have you on again.
Okay.
And we're going to kick it some more because you know what? We need to have these conversations. We need to get the information out there. We need people to think instead of reacting, think. So, Brother Ariel, say hi to your family for me. and all the brothers and sisters in Arizona, and continue
Nice.
to support Genesis Radio. And we will talk again, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.